The day Mark got paid always felt like a fresh start. Not because his life suddenly changed, but because, for a brief moment, it looked like it had. His phone buzzed at exactly 8:03 in the morning. Salary deposited. Those two words instantly changed his mood. The stress from the previous month seemed to disappear. The anxiety about bills faded into the background. The feeling of constantly being behind was replaced with something that looked a lot like hope. He opened his banking app. For the first time in weeks, the number looked healthy. He smiled. This month will be different. He had said those exact words every month for nearly 4 years. And every month, he believed them. Mark wasn't careless. At least that's what he told himself. He worked nearly 50 hours every week. He rarely missed a shift. His boss trusted him. His co-workers respected him. His parents often reminded him how responsible he had become. Yet somehow, his bank account never reflected any of that effort. His paycheck arrived once every month, but by the third day, it felt as though someone had quietly stolen it. Except nobody had. He had spent it himself. The strange part was, he couldn't explain where it went. If someone had asked him whether he bought expensive watches, he would have laughed. No. Luxury vacations? Never. Sports cars? Impossible. Designer clothes? Not really. He considered himself financially average. Ordinary, just another person trying to survive, which made his situation even more confusing. If he wasn't buying extravagant things, why was he always broke? That question stayed in the back of his mind for years. But he never looked too closely at the answer, because looking too closely meant accepting responsibility, and responsibility can be uncomfortable. That Friday evening, the city felt alive. People filled the sidewalks. Restaurants were packed. Music drifted through the streets. Friends were sending messages. Drinks tonight? You coming? We haven't seen you in weeks. Mark hesitated. He knew he should probably stay home. He also knew his paycheck had arrived only hours earlier. He looked at his account again. It'll be fine. That sentence cost him more money than he could imagine, because it'll be fine became the justification behind almost every unnecessary purchase he made. Dinner turned into cocktails. Cocktails became rideshares. The rideshare became late-night food. The late-night food somehow became online shopping while lying in bed. The next morning, he barely remembered placing the order. Yet somehow it already felt normal. Saturday afternoon arrived. He walked through a shopping mall without needing anything. That was the dangerous part. He wasn't shopping with a list. He was shopping with emotions. A jacket caught his attention. 40% off. A pair of sneakers. Limited time discount. Wireless headphones. Today's deal. His brain quietly translated every discount into permission. He wasn't spending money. He was saving money. At least. That's how it felt. By Sunday evening, his apartment looked almost identical. His life hadn't changed, but his bank account certainly had. The excitement from payday had quietly disappeared. Monday morning arrived. Back to work, back to routine, back to counting the days until the next paycheck. It happened so often that the cycle almost became invisible. Work, get paid, spend, regret, repeat. One afternoon during lunch, Mark sat beside an older co-worker named Daniel. Daniel had worked for the company for almost 30 years. Unlike everyone else, he never complained about money. He wasn't flashy. He didn't talk about expensive purchases. He didn't chase promotions. Yet he always seemed relaxed. One day Mark asked him, "How do you never seem stressed about money?" Daniel smiled. Instead of answering, he asked a question. "When you got paid last Friday?" Mark nodded. "Where did your money go?" Mark shrugged. "I don't know." Daniel nodded again. Exactly, that answer irritated him. It sounded too simple, too vague. But something about it stayed in his mind. That evening, Mark opened his banking app. Not for 10 seconds, for almost an hour. He scrolled through transaction after transaction. Coffee, lunch, streaming service, taxi, dinner, online order, convenience store, food delivery, subscription, another subscription, a payment he didn't even recognize. Each purchase looked harmless. $10, $20, $15, $8, $35. Nothing seemed large enough to cause a problem, yet together, they told a completely different story. It wasn't one giant mistake. It was hundreds of tiny ones. That realization unsettled him. Because fixing one giant mistake sounds easy, fixing hundreds of tiny habits, that's much harder. The next payday arrived. Mark decided to run an experiment. No complicated spreadsheets. In an impossible budget. Just one simple rule: before spending a single dollar, he would move 10% into savings. Immediately. No thinking. No debating. No waiting until the end of the month. The transfer took less than 30 seconds. It also felt terrifying. His account balance instantly looked smaller. His brain reacted almost immediately. What if you need that money? What if something happens? What if this month is different? He almost transferred it back. Instead, he closed the banking app. That decision lasted less than 1 minute, but it quietly changed the direction of his financial life. The first week felt uncomfortable. Every purchase suddenly felt more noticeable. He couldn't spend mindlessly anymore. He found himself asking strange questions. Do I actually want this? Or do I just want the feeling of buying something? That question surprised him, because the answer wasn't always the same. Sometimes he genuinely needed something. Other times, he simply wanted a small reward. A stressful day, buy something. Feeling bored? Order food. Feeling successful? Celebrate. Feeling disappointed? Treat yourself. He slowly realized something uncomfortable. His spending had very little to do with necessity. He had everything to do with emotion. Once he noticed that pattern, he couldn't stop seeing it. The coffee wasn't about caffeine. It was comfort. The online shopping wasn't about products. It was excitement. The expensive dinners weren't about hunger. They were about belonging. Money had quietly become the tool he used to manage emotions. And emotions never stop asking for more. The next month, something unusual happened. He still wanted to spend, but instead of buying immediately, he waited 24 hours. It sounded almost as simple, yet the result shocked him. Nearly half the things he wanted, he no longer wanted the next day. The excitement disappeared. The urgency vanished. The purchase suddenly seemed unnecessary. It wasn't that he had become disciplined overnight. He simply gave his emotions enough time to calm down. For years, he had confused desire with necessity. Now he could finally tell the difference. Weeks turned into months. His savings slowly grew. Not dramatically, not overnight. Just steadily. The numbers weren't impressive. At least not yet. But something else was happening. For the first time in years, he wasn't afraid to open his banking app. That feeling was worth more than he expected. Then something happened that tested everything. One Friday afternoon, his friends planned a weekend trip. Everyone was going. The hotel looked amazing. The restaurants looked expensive. The photos promised memories that would last forever. His first instinct was automatic. Book it. His second instinct was new. Can I actually afford this? Not, do I have enough money today? But, can I afford this without sacrificing my goals? Those questions sound almost identical. They're completely different. One focuses on the present. The other protects the future. Mark stayed home that weekend. At first, he felt left out. His phone filled with pictures. Smiles, beach, sunsets, fancy meals. For a few hours, he questioned his decision. Then Monday arrived. His friends returned. One of them complained about putting everything on a credit card. Another joked about eating noodles for the rest of the month. Someone else admitted they had borrowed money from their parents. The pictures had captured the fun. They hadn't captured the financial stress that followed. That weekend taught Mark another lesson. Social media almost always shows the purchase, rarely the payment, and there is a huge difference between the two. He began paying closer attention to the people around him. The coworker with the luxury SUV constantly worried about debt. The friend with the newest phone had almost no emergency savings. The neighbor who seemed wealthy admitted he couldn't afford an unexpected medical bill. Appearances were lying again and again. He started wondering whether he'd been chasing an illusion his entire adult life. Growing up, he believed rich people looked rich. Nice house, luxury car, expensive clothes. The older he became, the more he realized something surprising. Many people looked wealthy. Far fewer actually were. Real wealth often stayed invisible. It lived inside investment accounts, emergency funds, paid off mortgages, retirement savings, things nobody could photograph for social media. That realization changed the way he measured success. Instead of asking, "What can I buy?" he started asking, "What can I keep?" That one question quietly transformed every financial decision that followed. One evening, Daniel invited Mark over for dinner. Daniel's house looked almost exactly like it had 20 years earlier. Nothing extravagant. Nothing designed to impress. After dinner, Mark finally asked the question he'd been thinking about for months. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel smiled. "Of course. How did you become so good with money?" Daniel laughed. "I wasn't." Mark looked confused. "I made every mistake you can imagine. I spent every raise. I bought things I didn't need. I tried to impress people who weren't paying attention." "So what changed?" Daniel leaned back in his chair. "I realized something. If I spent my entire salary making today comfortable, I was stealing comfort from tomorrow." Mark sat quietly. Daniel continued. "Most people think saving money is about giving something up. I think it's about giving something to your future." Those words echoed in Mark's mind long after he drove home that night. He had always viewed saving as sacrifice. Now, he began seeing it as a gift. Not for someone else, for himself, years from now. That simple shift in perspective made consistency easier. Because every transfer into savings stopped feeling like a loss. It started feeling like an investment in peace. And peace turned out to be worth far more than impulse purchases ever were. Mark thought changing his habits would solve everything. In many ways. It did. But there was one problem he never expected. Changing your financial life often changes your social life too. The first time he noticed it was during lunch at work. A group of co-workers decided to order food from a restaurant they visited almost every day. The meals weren't outrageously expensive, just a little more than they needed to be. $20 here, $25 there. 30 on Fridays. It didn't seem like much. One co-worker turned toward Mark. "You ordering?" Normally, he wouldn't even think about it. He would simply say yes, swipe his card, eat, repeat tomorrow. Instead, he looked down at the lunch he had packed the night before. Chicken, rice, vegetables, simple, healthy, cheap, and good. The table became unusually quiet. One co-worker laughed, trying to save money. Another joked, "Come on, live a little." Mark smiled politely. "I am." The conversation moved on. But something inside him changed. He realized saving money wasn't always difficult because of numbers. Sometimes it was difficult because of people. Not because they wanted him to fail, because they wanted him to stay the same. When you improve your habits, you quietly challenge the habits of others, and not everyone likes that. The following weekend, another invitation arrived. A friend wanted to celebrate buying a brand new luxury car. Everyone gathered outside the dealership. Photos were taken, videos were posted. People congratulated him as though he had won an award. Mark was genuinely happy for his friend. Until they started talking. "I only had to put a small amount down. The monthly payments aren't that bad. I'll just work a little overtime." Mark recognized those sentences because he had said similar things years earlier. Not about a car, about countless purchases, finding ways to justify spending instead of asking whether the spending was necessary. Driving home that evening, he passed Daniel's old pickup truck parked outside a grocery store. The truck looked older than ever. Rust covered parts of the doors. The paint had almost completely faded. Yet Daniel never seemed embarrassed. He simply got in, started the engine, and drove away. For years, Mark would have seen the truck as a symbol of failure. Now, he saw something different. Freedom. No car payments. No financial pressure. No need to impress strangers at traffic lights. Just transportation. Nothing more. It was strange how changing his mindset changed what he admired. Months earlier, he admired expensive things. Now, he admired peace. One rainy Tuesday, the company announced layoffs. The news spread through the office like electricity. Nobody knew who would lose their job. Conversations became quieter. People refreshed their emails every few minutes. Anxiety filled every corner of the building. Mark felt nervous too, but he noticed something different. For the first time in years, he wasn't terrified. He had built an emergency fund. It wasn't enormous. It wouldn't last forever. But it existed if something happened. He had time to think, time to search, time to breathe. That feeling was completely new. The layoffs eventually happened. Several co-workers left the company. One of Mark's closest friends was among them. The next day they met for coffee. His friend looked exhausted. "I don't know what I'm going to do," Mark asked carefully. "Do you have any savings?" His friend looked down. "No, not really." I thought I'd start next year. Those words hit Mark harder than he expected, because they sounded exactly like the person he used to be. I'll start later. The most dangerous sentence in personal finance. Not because it's false, because later is never guaranteed. Watching his friend struggle reminded Mark why he had started changing. Saving money wasn't about becoming rich overnight. It was about creating choices. Without savings, every decision feels urgent. With savings, you gain the ability to think instead of panic. That realization completely transformed his definition of wealth. Wealth wasn't owning more things. Wealth was having more options. Around that time, Mark began reading books about money. One idea appeared again and again. Small habits create extraordinary results. At first, it sounded almost disappointing. He wanted a secret, a shortcut, a strategy nobody else knew. Instead, every successful investor seemed to repeat the same boring advice. Spend less than you earn. Save consistently. Invest regularly. Be patient. Avoid unnecessary debt. He almost laughed. Could it really be that simple? Eventually, he realized something. Simple doesn't mean easy. If it did, everyone would be financially free. One Saturday morning, Mark cleaned his apartment. As he organized drawers and closets, he discovered dozens of things he had forgotten he owned. A fitness tracker he used for 2 weeks. Headphones still inside the original box. Kitchen gadgets used once. Clothes with price tags still attached. An expensive backpack. Several unopened notebooks. A portable speaker. 3 phone chargers. He sat quietly on the floor, surrounded by purchases he barely remembered making. Each item represented a moment, when he believed buying something would improve his life. For a brief time. It had. Then the excitement disappeared. The object remained. The money didn't. He started calculating the total value of everything he rarely used. The number shocked him. Thousands of dollars, not spent on necessities, spent on temporary excitement. He wasn't angry. He was awake. That afternoon, he sold several items online. The money wasn't life-changing, but the lesson was. He realized clutter wasn't only taking up physical space. It had occupied financial space too. Every unnecessary purchase represented hours of work, hours he could never get back. Daniel once told him, "Whenever you buy something, ask yourself how many hours of your life you're trading for it." At first, Mark ignored that advice. Now, he couldn't stop thinking about it. A $200 purchase wasn't just $100. It might represent 8 hours, or 12, or 15 hours of his life. Time spent working, time he would never recover. Suddenly, buying became much harder. Not because he lacked money, because he respected time more. His habits continued improving. He automated his savings, then automated his investments. Every payday, money quietly moved into the future before he could spend it. He stopped relying on motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Systems stay. That became another important lesson. Successful people rarely depend on willpower. They build systems that make good decisions automatic. The months became years. People around Mark started noticing something. He wasn't richer because his salary had doubled. In fact, his income had only increased modestly. The real difference was invisible. His emergency fund continued growing. His investments quietly compounded. His debt steadily disappeared. He slept better. He worried less. He smiled more. Nothing about his lifestyle looked dramatically different. Everything about his financial life was. One afternoon, a new employee joined the company. Young, ambitious, excited on his first payday. He walked into work carrying shopping bags, new shoes, a new smartwatch, a designer jacket. The office congratulated him. Mark simply smiled. He recognized the excitement. He remembered feeling exactly the same. A week later, the young employee complained about having no money left. Mark didn't criticize him. Instead, he told him a story, not about investing, not about budgeting, not about compound interest. He told him about a man who used to spend his entire salary in 3 days. A man who believed he had an income problem until he discovered he actually had a habit problem. The young employee listened carefully, then asked quietly, what happened to him? Mark smiled. He stopped trying to change his paycheck. He started changing his decisions. The young man nodded slowly. That conversation reminded Mark of something beautiful. Financial wisdom doesn't become valuable when you learn it. It becomes valuable when you share it. Years later, Mark looked back at his old bank statements. He barely recognized the person who had made those purchases. Not because he had become perfect, because he had become intentional. He still bought things. He still enjoyed life. He still traveled, still celebrated, still spent money. The difference was simple. Now, he spent with purpose instead of impulse. Money no longer disappeared. It moved according to a plan. And perhaps the biggest lesson of all wasn't about dollars. It was about identity. For years, Mark believed he was just bad with money. That belief quietly controlled every decision he made. Once he stopped identifying as someone who always struggled, he started behaving like someone building wealth, and behavior, repeated consistently, became his new future. He often thought back to that first payday when everything changed, not because he suddenly earned more, not because he discovered a secret investment, because he finally asked a question he had avoided for years. Where is my money really going? The answer wasn't comfortable, but it was honest, and honest answers are where financial freedom begins. The man who spent his entire salary in 3 days didn't become wealthy because of one extraordinary decision. He became financially secure because thousands of ordinary decisions slowly replaced thousands of careless ones. That's how most financial transformations happen, quietly, patiently, one choice at a time. And the beautiful part is the same opportunity exists for anyone willing to start today, not next month, not after the next raise, not next year, today.